What this home cook pulled off might just be the wildest fraud in MasterChef history.
Look, say that again.
Season 12 brought a thrilling twist with a reunion of culinary heavyweights and some fresh faces from previous season. The real question though, had these home cooks actually learned from their past blunders? They were about to find out in the most high-pressure way possible, cooking for the US Coast Guard. Picture the intensity. Each team had the monumental task of whipping up a satisfying meal for over 100 hungry servicemen and women. The blue team, a crew from seasons 1 to 7, went head-to-head with the red team, featuring home cooks from seasons 8 to 11. Alejandro took the helm for the red team, while Christian commanded the blue team. The stakes were high. One unfortunate soul from the losing team would be sent packing. The red team kicked off with a steak extravaganza, but plot twist, they served up cold cuts instead.
The tray's cold, the steak's cold. I'm not gonna let you just send out.
Chef Ramsay was not thrilled about their chilly start. His fiery reaction made sure they turned up the heat, and in a surprising move, he moved the Coast Guard over to the blue team's camp. But hold on, things weren't looking any rosier for the blue team either.
Guys, we need mash.
We have no mash? Oh my god.
The mashed potatoes were still cooking, and Chef Ramsay's frustration? It was practically sizzling through the screen. Despite the chaos, the initial feedback from the diners was surprisingly upbeat for both teams. Yeah, that caught me off guard too. Amidst the Coast Guard's meal service, a raw steak made a cringeworthy debut. True to form, Chef Ramsay reacted with his signature flair. Oh, the drama. Fortunately, the fish might appreciate it more than the Coast Guard. But hold on to your seat for the real jaw-dropper, Alejandro, undeterred by the steak's untimely plunge into the fish tank, decided to play a risky move. He grabbed a tray of steaks that had accidentally fallen to the floor and tossed them right back onto the grill.
They're gonna get cooked.
Oh boy, talk about rolling the dice. Well, apparently, Alejandro was convinced that the floor had done wonders for the steak's safety, so no harm, no foul, right? One viewer commented saying, Alejandro clearly hasn't watched Hell's Kitchen or Kitchen Nightmares. Otherwise, he'd have known how angry Chef Ramsay gets when someone drops food on the floor and doesn't throw it right away. Were any MasterChef aspirants here? You better watch my channel to get a good old recap and breakdown of the signature Ramsay Fury and what leads to it. It's equal parts intense and entertaining. Anyway, back to the episode. As for Chef Ramsay's reaction, you can imagine the fireworks.
You better have a meeting right now and sort this out.
There was no bouncing back from that verbal smackdown. On a related note, someone pointed out that Alejandro hadn't exactly absorbed the lessons from his last appearance. Despite his teammates telling him the meat was too rare and turning out to be right, he just brushed them off with a trust me, trust me. The guy clearly isn't one for listening. And then there was the little issue of the stakes taking a tumble. As the chaos hit new levels of epic, Chef Ramsay decided enough was enough.
We need a real leader.
Michael.
He kicked Alejandro out of the captain's chair and handed the reins to Michael. Just when the red team was about to drive off a cliff, Chef Ramsay's quick thinking swooped in to save the day. Yeah, Chef Ramsay's got a knack for this kind of thing, though his warnings usually fall on ears as deaf as a doorknob. And predictably, the aftermath isn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. Now, here's a very nuanced take from a fan. They wrote, and I quote, "Honestly, hot take. I totally see where you're coming from. People are starving. Yes, that's true, and that context makes it difficult for me to throw out food too. Admittedly, I'll eat food if it drops on the floor, but that's my choice. I grew up in a relatively low-income family. My fiance's mom can't waste food either because she grew up in Korea literally eating bark off trees. Maybe Alejandro is the same way. When we watched the episode, my fiance and I both thought that maybe Alejandro's background made it difficult for him to waste food. The difference is this. Alejandro took the decision away from those unknowingly eating food that fell on the floor even if it was in a tray. The people eating his food had no choice. If he hadn't been caught, they would have never known. Alejandro's lackluster leadership definitely warranted a trip home, but I couldn't help feeling for him. He frequently talked about not having much food as a child, so it's understandable why he'd hesitate to toss food that hadn't hit the floor. What's your take on this? Hit the comment section. And while you are at it, let's go over the 5th episode of Season 13. Chef Ramsay revealed a massive new twist in the show's format.
From tonight, you'll cook alongside everyone else from your home region.
Yeah, and the one who prepares the best dish will earn the coveted MasterChef immunity pin, which ensures their safety from elimination in the next challenge. Moreover, winning the pin would also save their entire region from elimination that night.
Mark my words, this will be the most strategic season.
Now, the home cooks had 60 minutes to whip up their best state fair dish. As the clock started, the chefs took a dive into the MasterChef pantry.
In the beginning, you get an idea and you think you know where you're going, but you're taking fair foods and you're trying to elevate them to a level that they've never been before. Once you're in that kitchen and the clock is running, then you realize it is not as easy as you think it's.
That's Richie, and he was sure in the weeds. Now, Chef Ramsay looked a bit worried about Richie's ability to elevate his dish.
Savory. So it's a cheesecake filling with caramelized bacon. There's some great flavor there, but I'm not too sure at this stage how it's going to be elevated.
When the judges revealed the worst 3 plates of the night, he was up first with his deconstructed cheesecake featuring mascarpone crema, graham cracker crust, berry compote, and candied bacon. Despite the extensively elaborate description, Aaron found it
looking at this, and I just can't see State Fair realize I just see garnishes.
Chef Ramsay admitted the bacon was tasty, but felt the dish lacked sophistication like he suspected.
Had you put a little pound cake or something in the middle with all of this exterior goodness, we wouldn't be even talking right now.
Joe, too, ripped apart his dish and him for not getting the memo.
You didn't listen to what we asked for today? This dish would make an excellent ice cream topping.
But he somehow survived that night. He was not good, and he knew he was gonna do everything he possibly could to skate through, even lie. In the 6th episode, apples were the core ingredient in this mystery box challenge. See now, Kyle, the previous week's winner, earned the power to decide the type of dish each region will cook. After a quick team huddle, Kyle announced that the Midwest and West would go savory, while the Northeast and South would whip up sweets. The judges were worried, as Richie was slow to get his cupcake batter in the oven.
And on the heels of Richie's dessert from last week, got some redemption to do. He may be in a real bad position.
But, well, after being in the bottom 3 last week, he promised not to disappoint them again. But once the cupcakes were baking, they failed to rise, and you won't believe why.
My cupcakes didn't rise. I'm running out of time, and there's not much I can do to save them at this point. And then I realized I'm missing baking powder. I don't know how I made this mistake. It's not a mistake I normally make.
Disaster with a capital D. For the 2nd week in a row, Richie was representing the Northeast with his spiced home cakes with apple compote and tarragon whipped cream.
She used to make home cakes with no leavening. They were meant to be placed underneath the sauce, and then the sauce would soak it up. I made spiced home cakes with an apple compote on top.
Joe wasn't buying it. He was grilling Richie for renaming his cupcakes to home cakes to cover up his mistakes.
Home cakes as they lost their levitation?
No, they are a play on my grandmother's recipe.
But why did you change from where you started to where you ended? What would you call them?
I just wanted to call them what they are.
You wanted to call them what they became?
Richie's reluctance to admit he messed up wasn't about to work in his favor. Chef Ramsay felt Richie missed the mark and thought the apples would have been better inside the cakes rather than on top.
Yeah, so that they could soak up that sauce. I didn't want them to be too soft and get a little mushy.
Aaron, on the other hand, thought the cream was the only good part, which, by the way, didn't even involve the apples.
You need a bowl of that stuff to make these have moisture. The cream is the only saving grace on this whole dish.
As for Joe, well, check it out yourselves.
Like the density and the weight of a rock. Cupcakes, home cakes, call them what you want, they're no good.
They had a solid BS detector, Richie. He seemed to have rubbed them the wrong way by not owning up to why his dessert shifted from cupcakes to home cakes. And the judges were personally offended by his dishonesty.
I hate being lied to.
Ultimately, Richie had to leave the MasterChef kitchen at an embarrassing 19th place.
You missed the mark. And whilst you tried to pay homage to Grandma, the dish was just nowhere near MasterChef standard.
I understand.
Do you think he got booted for being a liar and putting up a lousy dish, or just for the sour dish alone? Let's move on to the 2nd episode of Season 5. If you ask me, Stephanie from this season was the ultimate poster child for arrogance. With her sky-high confidence, she seemed to think that was all it took to reach the top. Naturally, her delusions blew up in her face. In the elimination round of Episode 2, Stephanie was riding high. So high, in fact, that she took a major gamble with her dish.
That's a blue cheese cream sauce.
What are you doing with that?
Putting it on top of my lamb meatloaf.
See what I'm getting at? Joe even gave her a heads up, saying her approach was way too unorthodox. But here's the kicker.
Are you out of your mind?
She might call it confidence, but let's be real, it was just plain foolishness. Sure, taking risks can lead to success, but when the risks are this risky, is it really worth it? Joe's frustration was pretty clear.
I might be, but you know, I'm trying to win, so you gotta be a little out of your mind.
Do you want to go home?
As if things weren't already a hot mess, Stephanie decided to take a swing at Joe's critique. And wow, did she deliver some seriously passive-aggressive vibes?
I didn't want to be up there looking pretty. I'm not just a pretty face. I am here to win this competition and show America what I'm about.
Genuine question, how tough is it to compete without taking digs at others? I get it, you want to show you're more than just a pretty face, but so do the other contestants. They're up there for a reason. Experience and skill, right? She not only made herself look foolish, but also drew some curious glances from her peers. Unfortunately, this dish was her undoing, but Stephanie was all about her motto. Someone should have reminded her that in the kitchen, taking risks is all well and good, but it's just as likely to land you in hot water as it is to bring home the win. And when Judgment Day arrived, she found herself in a steaming pot of trouble. And what was on the chopping block? Her dish, of course.
It has couscous, pepper ribbons, and a blue cheese cream sauce.
It looked great, 10 out of 10 on the appearance scale, but the taste? Not so much. And when Chef Ramsay took a bite, you won't believe his reaction.
Sorry.
Ouch. That had to sting her pride. You'd think after all her effort, she'd get a nod of approval, but nope.
Very dry combination. I've got lots of chili flakes.
The ingredient combo was a mess, and Chef Ramsay just couldn't make sense of it. Usually, contestants have some idea of what they're making, but Stephanie seemed to think throwing random ingredients together would result in a culinary masterpiece. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Chef Ramsay's disappointment hit new heights, and his next words were no surprise.
O-M-E. That's where you should be heading.
After that, I'm pretty sure she won't be taking such wild risks again. But knowing Stephanie, she'll probably keep her pride in check.
I have never been told that my food is not good.
What this next fan favorite pulled off was completely unforgivable. As we all know, timing is crucial in the kitchen. One slip up can turn everything into a disaster.
Red team, stop! Stop!
And that's exactly what Bowen's stint as leader in Season 9, Episode 6 turned out to be. So here's the scoop. Bowen decided to play drill sergeant with SJ Yoon, trying to hurry things along.
Matt, I need somebody to fry the fish. Right now, I need fish. You don't need to go down now.
He must have been taking his leadership role a bit too seriously because he overlooked a critical detail. Fish needs precise timing. Cook it too early and it turns into a cold, soggy mess. Definitely not appetizing. Bowen's decision to rush things didn't win him any fans among his team. They even tried to convince him otherwise.
You sure? I'm sure.
Even though I may not agree with him, I'll take whatever task that the captain tells me to do.
But Bowen, being Bowen, was stubborn about starting the fish early. And, of course, Chef Ramsay caught them in the act.
Chef.
Bring me the tray of fish, it's cooked!
Yes, Chef.
Chef Ramsay was not pleased with Bowen's decision and made it crystal clear.
So they're gonna sit there for 10 minutes. What's gonna happen to this in 10 minutes?
They're gonna get soggy.
It's gonna get soggy. And look at that one. That's not even cooked. That's ice cold in there.
Poor SJ ended up facing the brunt of Ramsay's anger.
Please, SJ, I thought you'd know better.
Yes, Chef.
I'm begging you now, get your together.
Viewers were livid with Bowen for staying mum, while SJ took the fall. One viewer even expressed admiration for SJ's grace in owning up to the mistake, even though Bowen was the real culprit. Bowen's problem was a lack of patience, but let's shift gears to a team that mastered the art of waiting. It was the first team challenge of Season 6, in the 4th episode in the menu. Hamburgers with onion rings and coleslaw, plus fish and chips, all for the ravenous crowds at Knott's Berry Farm. But here's the twist, there was no fixed number of diners. Anyone who walked through the gate had to be fed by both teams. To make things even more exciting, every guest got to vote for their favorite dish. Dara was at the helm for the blue team, but from the start, they were seriously off their game. And here's the kicker, with just 10 minutes left on the clock, not a single piece of fish had even touched a pan.
What's you got cooked, Katrina?
None.
None. Hey, blue team! Blue team!
Yes.
There's no fish cooked!
Chef Ramsay immediately rounded up the blue team to give them a stern warning.
Pressure test? This is insane!
He was so livid that he straight up told Dara to do this.
Dara! Look at me.
Yes,
Should we just cut to the chase? This is insane!
Yup, it was crystal clear that Dara wasn't cut out for this challenge. So, she got the boot straight to the pressure test. With Dara effectively benched, Claudia stepped in to salvage the fish station. And guess what? She pulled it off and nailed it. Moving on, I think we all agree that Christopher from Season 6 is the quintessential example of all talk and no action. He swaggered into the competition brimming with confidence, but things quickly spiraled downhill. Here's the lowdown. In Episode 9, Chef Ramsay threw down the gauntlet, challenging everyone to replicate his legendary beef Wellington. Fingers crossed, nobody messes it up like in Hell's Kitchen. The contestants got a taste of the dish in pairs, soaking up the flavors and textures. When it came time to make their own, they were on their own. When they finally presented their creations, Graham dropped a surprise bombshell.
When you sat down for dinner earlier this evening, you were in fact forming your team.
And just when things couldn't get any more intense, Chef Ramsay threw in another curveball.
Beef Wellington dish from each pair.
When Christopher and Hetal stepped up with their Wellingtons, Chef Ramsay was left speechless.
This is actually Hethel's Wellington, but
What?
yeah.
His main concern?
I'm amazed. Hethel didn't even taste it.
Yep, Hetal hadn't even tasted the dish. But hey, how bad could it be, right? Chef Ramsay wasn't convinced, especially given Hetal's vegetarian background. And spoiler alert, neither was Hetal. Despite his overconfidence, Christopher was eager to pitch his own Wellington.
I would wager that my Wellington's probably the tastiest here.
With that kind of bravado, you'd expect his dish to deliver. But, unsurprisingly, it fell flat.
What is that?
Oh my.
That's bigger than you.
It's like family style.
Imagine bragging about how great you are while simultaneously putting someone else down only to present a disaster of a dish. Embarrassing doesn't even begin to cover it. And if you think that's bad, check out what Christopher had to say.
I respect Hefwell greatly. I don't want to throw under the bus, but my beef Wellington's amazing. I know my steak is on point.
Oh, and he didn't just stop there.
Honestly, as high caliber as something that I would serve in my restaurant.
When he finally put his dish on the table, Chef Ramsay's reaction was priceless.
What is that?
After all the gloating, seeing Ramsay's face was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. And Ramsay didn't hold back his insults.
It's like a cushion from the MasterChef lounge. What have you done?
Trust me, this was a moment that was probably haunting Christopher's dreams for weeks. The Wellington didn't just look bad, watch Ramsay cut into it. His disappointment was palpable.
I know, like, the potatoes came out good. I know.
Bloody
Anyways,
hell.
yes.
Pastry's raw.
Yeah, I'd facepalm too, buddy. But the real kicker? Heddle's Wellington was perfect. Even as a vegetarian, she nailed it, and Ramsay made sure to rub it in.
It's delicious.
And guess what? That wasn't the end of it.
Seasoned perfectly. That's the best vegetarian beef Wellington I've ever eaten.
Ramsay might have underestimated Hetal at first, but he definitely recognized her effort despite the earlier hiccup. Meanwhile, Christopher's luck kept plummeting. Next up, Christina tasted the dishes, and oh boy, did she use the chance to put Christopher in his place.
I'm confused about you.
Yeah, I'm...
No. It's my turn to talk.
Yeah, but Christopher got a masterclass in assertiveness from Christina, and she was just getting started.
Yeah, exactly, but that's the thing.
You wanted us to taste this?
Usually Christina's pretty laid back, but that day, she was seething. When Christina's feathers are ruffled, you know something big is about to go down. Christopher, on the other hand, kept trying to defend his dish.
If I had executed it properly, yes, I would want you to taste it, but I didn't.
You said, you're not gonna get to taste mine just because I left the sauce off.
He was making a grand mess of things, talking over her while Hetal tried to intervene by patting his shoulder. Christopher just didn't get it. As for Christina, she was done with his attitude and wasn't about to make it easy. She shut him down like the boss she is.
But you haven't been able to put it on a plate, and you gotta get your technique and your skill up before you can start running.
Someone needed to deliver that message, and I'm sure Christina enjoyed every moment of it. Up next, what went down in Season 4, Episode 5 was the absolute pinnacle of chaos. The challenge? Teams had to cook up a feast for a brigade of pint-sized critics. Jordan, leading the blue team, was tasked with impressing an entire elementary school. And if you've ever tried to please a crowd of kids, you know just how monumental that task is. Jordan assembled a team that seemed like a dream lineup: Adriana, Kathy, Howard, Johnny, Savannah, Eddie, James, and Chrissy. On paper, it looked stellar, or so you'd think. Their mission was to whip up a menu featuring turkey meatballs with pasta, green beans, and apple crisp for dessert. Sounds like a winning spread, right? But before they even hit their stride, Chef Ramsay voiced some serious concerns.
Right around 2. If it's gonna be short, we'll check the...
So 2 balls.
Feeding 300 kids? There's a mountain of meatballs, 1,000 or more at the very least. Ramsay knew there was no way a bunch of rookies could handle that kind of load, even without the ticking clock adding to the pressure.
You've got a lot of prep involved. 600 meatballs.
600 meatballs they're gonna make?
600 meatballs.
Oh my.
With the clock ticking and the stakes high, you had to wonder, could the blue team pull off a miracle? Well, if they had, I wouldn't be recounting this fiasco, would I? The blue team stumbled right out of the gate, starting fashionably late.
Guys, we just started making meatballs. 10 more trays like that to get to 300 meatballs. 20 more to get to 600 meatballs.
Amid the chaos, Chrissy, with her almost supernatural culinary intuition, foresaw the impending disaster.
The time it's taken us making all these meatballs is just stupid.
Sure, it wasn't exactly a superpower, just basic chef knowledge or, you know, basic math skills. Hopefully those kids were getting a better education than these chefs. Meanwhile, the judges, eagerly awaiting their feast, were baffled by the blue team's snail-like progress. With over 600 meatballs on the line, the team's sluggish pace was not helping. As the clock kept ticking, the blue team found themselves in a dire situation where, shockingly, they couldn't churn out all those meatballs. Desperate to salvage the sinking ship, a tactical shift was urgently needed.
To start diversing and someone step up and take responsibility.
Chef Ramsay, meanwhile, was fuming. His patience was evaporating by the second. Enter Jordan with a bizarre fix. In a moment of brilliance, or maybe panic, he decided to pivot and make a meat sauce instead.
Hey, we're just gonna do a meat sauce. You don't need to roll them anymore.
Guess what? Things were about to get extra saucy. With less than a minute remaining, the green beans were still in disarray.
1 minute to go. Bean salad, I need it ASAP.
But this was just a sign of the bigger issues at play. The trifecta of poor decisions, dreadful teamwork, and abysmal leadership saw the team crumble under pressure like never before. Moving on, Mark Raffaelli was on a path to self-destruction when he entered the MasterChef kitchen during Season 2. Landing in the not-so-coveted 17th place, Mark's time on the show was characterized by a series of seemingly minor blunders that led to his early exit. And get this, his mistake wasn't even a major blunder like Courtney's. It was pretty trivial in the grand scheme of things. In the chaotic MasterChef kitchen, contestants had to create culinary masterpieces under immense pressure. Mark's downfall was in his handling of these challenges. As the elimination rounds stacked up, Mark was caught in a whirlwind of mistakes.
French or British cuisine?
Spoiler, he chose French cuisine. Mark managed to stay in the competition after a couple of grueling rounds. But things took a turn during a challenge when Christian, wielding his previous win's authority, selected the dish for the contestants to prepare. The kitchen buzzed with frantic activity as Mark scrambled for the ingredients.
Has anyone seen time?
I have no idea what I'm gonna cook.
Graham, sensing Mark's determination, held high hopes for him. However, the critical moment arrived when the chef questioned Mark's confidence in his dish. Mark, perhaps feeling the weight of the competition, faltered in his response.
French restaurants?
No.
Okay. So you're kind of flying blind?
Yes.
Okay.
Determined, Mark presented his creation, a peppercorn-crusted filet.
Creamy rosemary, garlic mashed with a béarnaise sauce.
But excitement quickly turned to dismay when Joe uncovered a serious mistake.
And flour?
I had a little bit of starch because it was
raw,
liquidy.
Raw flour had somehow made its way into the mashed potatoes. Yes, raw flour.
Raw flour in here.
What?
What could have been a standout dish was now a culinary catastrophe. Chef Ramsay, unsurprisingly, expressed his disappointment.
In cooking and adding flour to a liquid mashed potato.
And, of course, he didn't stop there.
Is one of them.
Raw flour in mashed potatoes is considered a cardinal culinary sin, a mistake that should never occur. Mark, realizing the gravity of his blunder, stood under the harsh spotlight of scrutiny.
Someone else's dish was worse than mine, but adding flour to mashed potatoes like that without cooking them down is a big no-no. Even if someone's dish was worse than mine.
As the judges deliberated, Mark knew his fate was hanging by a thread. In the end, his MasterChef journey came to a sudden halt.
Should have listened to my instinct and done it the right way. Nevertheless, it was an amazing experience.
The raw flour fiasco sealed his fate, leading to his departure with a heavy heart. It was a harsh lesson in the unforgiving world of culinary arts, where even minor mistakes can lead to an abrupt exit. Reflecting on his experience, Mark acknowledged that the highs and lows of his journey had shaped him into a better chef, ready to tackle future challenges with newfound wisdom.
And I wouldn't change it for anything.
As he said goodbye to the MasterChef kitchen, Mark left with the lessons learned and a resolve to rise above any culinary obstacle in his path. So, here's a thought. Considering how Courtney and Mark's dishes turned out, who do you think deserved a second chance? Are salty donuts worse than raw flour in a dish? What would your judgment be if you were the MasterChef judge? Let me know in the comments below. Now, what do you know about cooking duck? Be prepared to question everything. Alright, hang tight because Sean and Katie were aiming for the stars. They went for broke with scallops as their starter and duck breast as the main course. And let's be honest, these dishes are notoriously tricky, perfect timing is crucial. But hey, they were ready to bet it all on this high-stakes gamble, hoping for a big payoff. Uni took charge of the blue team, while Julia led the red team, adding an extra layer of unpredictability to the kitchen clash. And the moment they entered the cooking tent, the strategic games began. Julia faced some pushback on her menu ideas, but like a true leader, she stood firm and got her team's backing. And when Chef Ramsay came around to check on the red team, he stumbled upon a disaster that even kitchen nightmares would blush at.
Oh, stop!
The team had seasoned their duck before cooking it, an elementary mistake that even newbies should avoid since salt draws out moisture. Chef Ramsay's fury hit new levels when he realized what they'd done.
But you never season them until you cook them, because when you hit the pan, there's going to be watery.
Would the red team manage to bounce back from this blunder, or were they destined to serve a duck disaster? You'll have to catch my next video for the full story. For now, brace yourself for this unexpected twist.
Get a cloth and dry them. Get rid of the seasoning quick.
It was one of those moves that would make Chef Ramsay question his entire career choice. And unsurprisingly, what happened next was truly jaw-dropping.
We're all over the place. And do you know why? No one's communicating, and the captain's disappeared. You need to get on the same page. Is that clear?
Content warning, it's not for the faint of heart. Over on the blue team, they were also set to test Chef Ramsay's patience from the get-go. Their menu idea had everyone raising eyebrows.
Have you ever seen an orange-zested mash in any restaurant anywhere in the world?
Chef Ramsay didn't hold back, calling their plan outright foolish and demanding they overhaul their menu in a race against time. So, what do you think happened? Did the blue team rise from their initial blunder, or was Chef Ramsay about to call a culinary catastrophe? Just when it seemed like they might turn things around, they plunged into yet another culinary storm.
Sat down, and the puree's raw. Already, blue team.
Yep, they were all set to serve up a puree, but the execution left a lot to be desired. As if that wasn't enough, Uni waltzed in with a plate of garlic mashed potatoes, time-consuming and, frankly, uninspired. Shanika tried to steer the ship right with some solid advice, but Uni stubbornly clung to his garlic dream like it was the holy grail of wedding fare. I mean, if that's what he considers a feast, I'd suggest the bride and groom might need a different kind of celebration. Chef Ramsay, with zero patience left, decided to step in and give the blue team a piece of his mind.
We're gonna elect 2 home cooks that have been flying under the radar.
But there's more. Upon hearing Shanika's insights, Chef Ramsay pushed the team to follow her guidance. Junie eventually relented, but it was clear he was at a crossroads. The stakes were high, and Chef Ramsay had a tough choice to make.
You are not going to captain this team any longer. Have a meeting and somebody step up and run this team.
In a dramatic twist, Chef Ramsay stripped Junie of his captaincy. Taylor stepped in with a clear vision and strategic direction, a sharp contrast to Junie's mishandling. Under Taylor's leadership, the blue team managed to salvage their situation and end on a positive note. Yet, victory slipped through their fingers, leaving a mix of redemption and the sting of a near miss. Meanwhile, let's move on to another epic fail, which sadly was quite painful to watch. Alright, so here's a primer on what to expect next.
Who was that earlier?
Shanika.
So
each team captain kicked off the culinary chaos by picking a dish to whip up. But here's the twist. Every 15 minutes, a new chef strolled into the kitchen, totally clueless about what exactly was cooking. Now, let's talk about Jared, the mastermind behind the blue team. He strutted in with all the confidence of a seasoned chef and decided on a dish. Mussels in a coconut and tomato broth.
I look into the pot and I see the broth and think to myself, I definitely want to improve.
Sounds fancy, right? But here's the genius part. It's not just delicious, it's easy for everyone on the team to wrap their heads around. It was a pretty sound strategy.
Oh, what's he doing, lobster?
And as for Jared, let's just say his cooking skills were matched only by his knack for leadership. I mean, I'm sure the judges couldn't wait to see how this recipe would turn out. However, things were about to go spiraling out of control before long, and I don't think anyone, least of all Jared, expected things to go that way. John, the third cook to step up to the plate, didn't quite catch Fiona's relay message. Instead of getting mussels in a coconut and tomato broth like she said, this is how that insane mind of his interpreted what to do next.
His left hand. Is it chocolate?
It was frustrating to watch. You could clearly see that written all over their faces. And boy, did he take that message to heart. In just 15 minutes, yes, you heard that right, 15 measly minutes, John dashed to the pantry like a madman possessed. He was grabbing everything in sight, tossing in a smorgasbord of seafood to try and throw the Hail Mary of the century. But wait, there's more.
Now I'm really freaking out. What is he doing with white chocolate?
In a move that would make even the bravest of chefs break into a sweat, he snagged a block of white chocolate. Why? Because, in John's world apparently, making a velouté out of chocolate was the next big thing that even the judges hadn't put their finger on the pulse of.
What is he doing?
John.
There's a coconut mussel broth.
And not even Marco Pierre White. He sauntered over like a concerned parent about to confront their misbehaving child, and he asked a question that wouldn't be out of place in that context either.
Are you going back to your old habits?
I'm going to keep it simple, so I'm just going to have
white chocolate velouté.
But did John listen? Oh no, he barreled ahead, headfirst into danger, completely oblivious to the fact that he was about to crash and burn.
What are you doing?
And just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, it did. It always seems to, doesn't it? John's cooking frenzy reached a crescendo as he poured his heart and soul into the catastrophe of the century. Meanwhile, the rest of us could only watch in awe and horror, depending on how you take it, as he single-handedly transforms a simple dish of mussels into a culinary calamity of epic proportions.
I know exactly what's going on now. This dish is just beyond complicated. It's going to definitely overwhelm.
Meanwhile, the clock was ticking, and Jared was supposed to lead his squad to victory with this mussel masterpiece. But guess what? When his time was up, it was like a kitchen nightmare there. There were mussels everywhere, half cooked, half undone, and the counter was cluttered like a hoarder's paradise.
Johnny, what are you doing? Why are you doing a white chocolate velouté with a coconut?
And then came Amy, the fourth cook in line, hoping to salvage the situation. But hold your aprons, folks, because John, the third chef, couldn't even string 2 words together to explain what the heck he was trying to cook. It was like he was speaking a whole different language.
I've added that broth into it, and we're gonna be adding white.
With just 30 minutes left on the clock, things were looking bleak, and no one had a clue what was happening. Fast forward to the end, and it was like a disaster served with a side of humiliation.
I just wanted to hide under a rock.
Too late, John. Too late. Amy and Georgia were left scratching their heads, staring at a pot of culinary catastrophe. And guess what? Team Blue got the boot straight into the elimination round. And there was John on the other side, admitting defeat with a feeble "I messed up." Well, no kidding, John. Maybe next time, stick to microwave meals. I mean, how hard could it be to just stick to the menu and rules? But do you agree? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on the post notifications. And if you want to watch another mind-bending video, then make sure to check out this next post right here. It's even crazier.